In Exodus 3, Moses discovered the glory of God in a desert bush. It was just an ordinary bush, nothing special. 1 in a million. The day before God chose to make his glory seen in that special way, nobody would have given the bush a second glance. It was that ordinary. And if the next day the bush had bragged that it was special, that it must be special, because God had chosen to make himself known in it, the other bushes could have argued in an opposite direction. They could have said, no, God wanted to make his glory known in the weakest, most common bush in the wilderness. Good argument, that. In any case, in just another bush, God appeared and showed his glory and his concern for his human family. I've seen that down the years. So have you. Ordinary bushes. God showing himself in them. And God help us not realizing it. It was only years later that I realized that when I was looking at my mother, I should have taken off my shoes. The ground I was standing on was holy. There's something like that in Harold's story. A story told to us by Richard Seltzer. In Harold's story, we see the love of beauty, the poignancy of lovely dreams, and the defiance of harsh reality. Listen, there's gallantry hidden everywhere, in the most astonishing places and in the most ordinary people. You'd never expect it to be in them, but there it is. And there, God shows himself. Seltzer tells us that Dr. Alain gunned his car up the winding road toward the Fairview Convalescent Hospital. He hadn't visited this one before, but he knew well enough what to expect. There were two types. One, darkly old, and the other, geometrically decorated in plastic and aluminium. And no self-respecting germ would rest on either of those. He didn't like either one of them, but he disliked less the old converted houses with signs on the walls that said, "In God we trust," or "Jesus loves you." Alain knew he had reached the site when he began to see patients here and there on the lawn, propped into deck chairs, or standing immobile over canes like withered corn stalks. And they'd wait there, peering through their cataracts until attendants came, white and unsmiling, to coax them back inside, you see. He pulled into the parking lot and consulted the list of patients he had to see. Alvin Richardson. That was the first name. Ulcer of foot. "We're going to find Mr. Richardson," he asked the nurse at the desk. "Room 15, doctor," she said. He passed open doors through which he could see the unmoving mounds of the bedridden. In the bed in number 15, Alvin Richardson lay on his back, staring at the tangle of his feet that hung suspended above his head like antlers. One foot was covered by a bandage that was wet with drainage from a concealed wound. "Mr. Richardson?" No response. The doctor unwrapped the soggy gauze. The odor of rot was very strong. A creeping ulcer curved along the entire side of the foot and across the sole. Put on his rubber gloves, bent over the dead foot, directly beyond which he could see the man's face. The man's eyes roved in their fissures, briefly reconnoitering the operation that was going on above him. Then, preoccupied with a fog of their own, they moved on. The doctor didn't hear the first pop, nor the second or third. It was only later that he realized them back from below the threshold of hearing. At the fourth or fifth, he began to wonder idly, what are those sounds? They were spaced irregularly, 2 or 3 minutes apart, and they weren't all of the same intensity. At the sixth pop, he turned, and with a jolt, he saw there was another person in the room. "Oh, I beg your pardon. I didn't see you. You startled me." The man sitting in a low wheelchair with his back to Elaine didn't answer. "I mean, have you been here all the time?" In front of the wheelchair was an ancient typewriter. And as the doctor watched, an arm flung itself upward from the man's body, bending and winding, as though it had more joints than it should have had. Then the other arm appeared, flying up to meet its fellow, steering by the same incomprehensible stars, I suppose. As they struggled in the air, the huge head tipped forward on his neck and turned to face the right hand, squinting to get it in his sights. With a violent jerk, suddenly the hand was brought down on the typewriter and pop. The index finger struck a key. Elaine caught his breath. The man was typing, for pity's sake. His feet, encased in heavy black shoes, dangled freely. The shoes were far from new, but they were strikingly unscuffed, not a mark. Wasn't a walker who wore them. They were either weights or ornaments. The trousers, way too big, voluminous. They were black and suspended from the shoulders. He wore a gray undershirt, and from the undershirt emerged 2 arms and a neck of whiteness so stark that they denied the presence of blood beneath the surface. His great head rose to eye the page in the typewriter and saw the doctor. The lips, surprisingly red, were pulled into a grimace, and that might have been a smile. Hello, the doctor said, clearing his throat. Ow. The voice had the same lack of control as the arms. It gave the distinct impression that unless great care was taken, it would shoot off into outer reaches of sound that would terrify both the listener and the speaker. You're typing, the doctor said blankly, aware of his awkwardness. I'm Dr. Elaine. I've come to treat your roommate's bad leg. What's your name? Harold. Harold? Us. Elaine fervently wished he hadn't started the conversation. The man seemed to be expecting more. So he was without embarrassment. It was Elaine who was ill at ease. Pardon me for intruding, he wanted to begin. I couldn't help but be impressed by your ability to type. But he couldn't say that because there was something like intelligence sparkling in the man's eyes. So he looked for other words. You've been here long? Us. Harold didn't shift his gaze. He just continued to watch the doctor, holding him with his eyes. What are you writing? A letter. How long does it take you to type a letter? A month. A month? Us. He could see that the page of the typewriter was 3/4 covered with type. He had moved within a few feet of the man and darted a glance at the page. My dearest Vera, he read. My dearest Vera, great day. He's writing a woman, calling her my and dearest. The doctor's hands shook a bit. He inched closer, knowing that he would read the letter, knowing too that he'd be seen, caring about that, but yet feeling a compulsion to do it. Within reading distance, he quickly scanned the page. It was hardly readable. Surreal. There were many letters crossed out with X's. That must have cost a bit of energy. Words ran together unspaced, and whole lines slanted wildly. You know what it said? Here's what it said. My dearest Vera, there's such a bustle and stir at the hotel. It's as though we'll be visited today by an important personage, a queen or an archangel or wild hope. By you, my darling. Nothing else would explain the high one senses here today. 12 times I've turned from my book to peer expectantly down the road. Even the lilies at the gate, they're bobbing and ducking to get a better view. Well, we'll try to keep from going mad with anticipation. Perhaps a walk will help. My neighbor here, old Richardson, he's a walker. Nothing stops him. Not heath or steppe or veldt or mesa is safe from his clodhoppers. Now me, I'm just an ambler, a meanderer. I don't like to butt into nature's business. She knew what she was about, arranging her grass and her sand that way. Doesn't need my boot to knock it all askew. No, ma'am, I slither through the blades like a green snake, leaving it all arranged just as nature put it. Oh, Vera, hurry back to me. Man can't live forever by whimsy and caprice. And I must get back to the serious work of my life, you, my magnum opus, my unicorn. Your last letter should have been written in light on hummingbirds' wings. It's love perfused with air. To be loved by you is everything. When the doctor finished, he looked down, and there was Harold, grinning up at him. No accusation in the grin. No resentment. The doctor stood there, embarrassed no longer. It was as though the letter had stripped the entire experience of pretense and formality. The two men seemed to have, discovered each other. And then Elaine looked at the night table near Harold's bed. It was a wasteland. Tissues, postcards, loose crackers, a jar of water. In the center stood the framed photograph of a woman, glossy, dark. She was gazing coolly over the shoulder of the viewer. She had the trace of a smile on her flawless features. In the corner was written with a flourish, "To Harold, with love." And under that, the name of the famous actress, Joan Crawford. The doctor nodded slightly toward the photograph. Vera? Ah, yes. Harold grinned. Don't you love that story? Doesn't it remind us in a marvelous way that love isn't only for the beautiful people? And doesn't it forbid us, the vast majority of us anyway, doesn't it forbid us to whimper and whine? Doesn't it remind us that gallantry can be found everywhere, in the strangest places, and in the people you would least expect it in? Look, I know about wicked people. I know about wicked people. I know because, in part, I'm wicked. I don't need lectures on the truth that humans are terribly wicked. Sometimes I'm so ashamed of myself. But sometimes I'm so proud of the human family that faces so much and comes up with so much. God bless all the Harolds, fictional characters or real. The story is